The cameras were rolling, the lights were low, and what started as a calm talk between Joe Rogan and Candace Owens turned into one of the most uncomfortable moments the internet has ever seen. This wasn't a debate, it was a confrontation, a quiet, sharp exchange about something everyone thought was over: Charlie Kirk's tragedy and the pain his widow Erica has carried ever since. Joe leaned forward, his tone careful but cold, asking questions that hit like a punch. Candace didn't flinch. She said she had been told things the media didn't want to touch, things that could change how people remember Charlie forever. There was no shouting, just tension, and the sound of silence between every word. By the time the clip hit social media, fans were calling it the moment everything cracked. Emotions ran high, accusations flew online, and Erica Kirk's name trended again for all the wrong reasons. Some called Candace brave, others called her cruel, but everyone agreed on one thing: something about this story just doesn't add up. Before we start, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story isn't just trending, it's splitting the internet in half. Joe Rogan versus Candace Owens. Hidden messages, shocking claims, and an emotional reaction from Charlie Kirk's widow that nobody saw coming. Fans are divided, insiders are whispering, and the truth, it's buried somewhere in the noise. Stay till the end, because what happens halfway through this confrontation might change everything you thought you knew about all three of them. The studio lights were dim, but the air was heavy, thick with tension that everyone could feel, but no one wanted to name. Joe Rogan leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on Candace Owens like he was studying a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. The cameras had just started rolling, but it was already clear this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. Viewers later said they could tell something was off from the first minute. Candace's voice trembled just slightly, not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. She had been repeating the same line for days now. She wasn't accusing anyone, she was only asking questions. Still, the more she said it, the more those questions began to sound like answers people weren't ready to hear. Joe rubbed his temple, half frustrated, half intrigued. He asked, "You know what this sounds like, right?" He asked, his tone a strange mix of concern and disbelief. "It sounds like you're saying there's a whole other story behind what happened." Candace took a slow breath, looked directly at him, and said softly, "That's because there is. At least, that's what people are saying." She emphasized the last part, careful to remind everyone she was reporting the noise, not the truth. Still, her words carried a weight that no disclaimer could soften. Across social media, clips of the exchange were spreading like wildfire. One moment, Joe was trying to keep the conversation grounded, and the next, he was leaning forward, eyebrows furrowed, asking why nobody else was covering this. "You're telling me," he said, "that people close to Charlie told you he felt unsafe before it happened?" Candace nodded slowly, eyes down, as if even saying it out loud made her uneasy. "3 people," she said, off record. "They told me he said he thought something bad was coming." The studio went silent. You could almost hear the heartbeat in the room. After that line, fans flooded the comment sections. Some believed her instantly, saying it explained everything. Others called it reckless, accusing her of adding fuel to an already painful story. But what made the clip explode wasn't just what she said, it was the way Joe reacted. He didn't attack her, but his expression said everything. "If that's true," he murmured, "then that changes the whole picture." The camera cut between them, each frame holding its own kind of tension. Candace had tears forming at the edges of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "You think I want this?" she whispered, half to Joe, half to herself. "I've been trying to process it just like everyone else, but the things I've heard, they don't line up." Joe leaned closer, almost whispering back, "What doesn't line up?" Candace hesitated. The way they described the scene, the timeline, the weapon, and then there's the messages. The mention of messages hit the internet like a spark in dry grass. Within hours, rumors multiplied, screenshots, anonymous posts, even supposed leaks that nobody could verify. And through it all, Candace's name trended alongside Charlie's widow, Erica. Everyone wanted to know what she thought of all this, but Erica stayed silent, at least in public. Friends close to her said she'd been keeping to herself, refusing interviews, ignoring calls. Some said she was grieving in peace. Others claimed she was furious about how her husband's name was being pulled into controversy again. Meanwhile, Joe's podcast numbers spiked. People who never cared about politics before were now glued to the replay, analyzing every pause, every side glance. Some said Joe was too harsh. Others said he went too easy on her. But what no one could deny how raw it felt. Two powerful voices, both shaken, both trying to make sense of something that made no sense at all. Later that night, Candace posted a short message online. "I'm not saying I know the truth. I'm saying I can't stop thinking about what I was told." The post gathered thousands of reactions in minutes. Hearts, tears, angry faces, all of it blurred together into a digital storm. Among the comments, one stood out, supposedly from someone who claimed to be at the event that day. They wrote, "You don't know the half of it. There was someone else there, someone no one's talking about." That single sentence set off a new wave of speculation, and by morning, every talk show was dissecting it. Joe woke up to find his inbox full of messages, journalists asking for follow-ups, friends warning him to tread carefully. On his next show, he addressed the chaos head-on. "Listen," he said, "we're just talking about what's out there. I don't know what really happened, none of us do. But if people close to Charlie said something felt wrong, then we should at least ask why." He wasn't defending Candace, but he wasn't dismissing her either. He was walking a tightrope, and the audience could feel it. By that weekend, the narrative had spiraled far beyond the original interview. New clips surfaced, including one where a man could be heard shouting something strange in the background during the chaotic scene at the university. Some claimed it was just a random onlooker. Others insisted it was a distraction. Candace, in her next post, simply said, "Too many coincidences, stop being coincidences." Joe, during a later stream, shook his head and muttered, "This story's getting weirder by the day." People close to Erica finally broke their silence. One friend, speaking anonymously, told a local outlet that Erica was hurt and angry that her husband's memory was being used in what she calls media games. According to that source, Erica felt betrayed, not just by the internet, but by the people who claim to be protecting Charlie's legacy. "She just wants peace," the friend said, "but peace doesn't sell podcasts." Still, fans refused to let it go. They shared clips of Erica wiping away tears at a recent church service, captioning it with wild theories about what she might know. Every gesture, every glance became fuel for endless speculation. And in the middle of all this noise stood Candace, calm but visibly drained. "I didn't want to open this door," she told Joe during another segment, "but once people start sending you things, once you see certain messages, it's hard to unsee them." Joe exhaled slowly, tapping the table with his knuckles. "You're sure you're not being used?" he asked quietly. Candace looked up, her eyes steady. "Maybe I am, but maybe we all are." That line echoed across social media, played and replayed in countless edits, each one set to dramatic music, each one sparking another round of heated debate. No one knew where the truth ended and the performance began, but one thing was clear. The world was watching for answers anymore. They were watching for emotion, for the spectacle, for that moment when someone might finally say too much. And as the lights dimmed again for another taping, both Joe and Candace knew they were walking straight into the storm they had helped create. The next episode began with a silence so thick you could hear the sound of Joe tapping his ring against the wooden table. It wasn't an argument this time. It was something heavier, like both of them understood the line they were about to cross. The cameras rolled, and Candace sat across from him with her phone face down on the table. She wasn't smiling like before. Her tone was flat, almost exhausted, but her eyes carried that same determination that had made the last episode explode across every platform imaginable. Joe opened with a measured tone, his voice lower than usual. "Candace, you realize what you said last time has gone everywhere, right? It's not just talk anymore. People are running with it." She gave a slow nod, her hands clasped together. I know, and I don't regret asking questions. I just wish people would stop pretending it's all black and white. She took a deep breath before continuing. Someone close to Erica reached out to me after our last episode, she said. Joe's eyebrows lifted, but he didn't interrupt. They said Erica isn't angry at me, not directly. She's just tired. Tired of everyone turning her pain into a headline. Apparently, she didn't even know half the details the investigators released. That's what broke her. Her voice wavered, and for the first time, Joe softened. That's awful, he said quietly. She didn't deserve any of this. The atmosphere shifted. For a few seconds, they weren't podcaster and commentator. They were two people trying to make sense of grief that didn't belong to them. But just when it felt like things might calm down, Candace hesitated and looked at Joe again. There's more, she said. The messages I mentioned, one of them came from someone inside the team. Not rumor, not hearsay. I've seen screenshots. The room froze. Joe leaned in, lowering his voice like he was afraid of being overheard. Someone inside Turning Point? He asked. Candace didn't confirm, but her silence said enough. Viewers would later describe that moment as the instant everything shifted from speculation to full-blown tension. Joe tried to push back gently, asking if she had verified them, but she interrupted. I'm not showing anything. I don't want anyone's names dragged through the mud. I'm not an investigator, Joe. I'm a person who can't sleep at night because too many things don't make sense. Her voice cracked on the last words, and even Joe, known for his tough tone, stayed quiet. After the episode aired, the internet split down the middle. Some called Candace brave, others called her reckless. Fans were making timelines, connecting dots that probably weren't even there, while critics accused her of feeding chaos. One viral post claimed that one of the insiders she mentioned had gone silent online after the broadcast. Another claimed the family lawyer had advised Erica not to respond publicly anymore. None of it could be proven, but that didn't matter. In the digital age, doubt spreads faster than truth. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Joe's production team started feeling the heat. Sponsors called with concerns. Social media platforms began flagging clips of their conversation for unverified claims. One producer was overheard saying, "This is turning into a wildfire." Joe noticed the tension too. On his next show, he made an indirect statement. Look, he said to his audience, these are conversations. People talking through things they don't understand. We're not declaring what's real. We're exploring what people are saying. But that clarification didn't stop the storm. As the week went on, new names began surfacing. People online dug into old photos of the event, pointing out unfamiliar faces in the background. One man with a baseball cap, another wearing a press badge that no outlet recognized. Speculation ran wild. Were these security, protesters, undercover agents? Each theory got louder than the last. Candace posted one simple message in response. Look closely. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight. That single post hit 1 million views in under an hour. Erica, on the other hand, was seen leaving her home quietly with her mother. Paparazzi photos showed her face pale, her eyes red from tears. She hadn't spoken publicly yet, but her silence only fueled more gossip. Talk shows started debating whether she'd eventually confront Candace or go to court. One contender said, "This isn't just politics anymore. This is personal, and personal stories always draw blood." Inside Joe's studio, the tension between him and Candace had started to change shape. What had begun as professional disagreement was now turning into something more emotional. Two people trapped between truth, loyalty, and fear of going too far. Joe respected her courage, but hated the fallout it was creating. Candace respected his honesty, but felt like he didn't understand what it meant to be the only one speaking when everyone else stayed silent. Then came the twist no one saw coming. During a commercial break in a live stream, Joe's producer whispered something in his ear. His expression changed instantly. When they came back on air, Joe hesitated, then looked straight into the camera. Apparently, he said slowly, there's a new video circulating from the night of the incident. Candace's head snapped up. What kind of video? She asked. Joe turned to her, his tone cautious. It's grainy, hard to tell, but people think it shows someone leaving the rooftop before the authorities arrived. The studio fell silent. Viewers watching live began flooding the chat, demanding details. Candace's voice was barely above a whisper. Is it verified? Joe shook his head. No, not yet, but it's spreading fast. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked down. This is exactly what I meant. They'll say we're crazy until something new appears, and then everyone pretends they knew all along. Joe sighed deeply. Or, he said, they'll say it's fake and still ignore the bigger question. The moment was raw, unscripted, and painfully real. Outside the studio, the internet had already turned the new clip into its own circus. Every frame was slowed down, zoomed in, analyzed. One person claimed the figure in the video wore the same jacket as a man seen at another high-profile event years ago. Another swore it was all edited. The truth, as usual, got buried under the noise. But one thing was clear. The story was far from dying, and with every passing hour, it was pulling more people into its orbit, supporters, skeptics, and those who just wanted to see how deep this rabbit hole went. By the time they met again, the energy in the studio was completely different. The laughter and small talk were gone. Joe sat in silence for a long moment before the red light blinked on, signaling they were live. He cleared his throat, his voice lower than usual. Candace, I watched that clip you mentioned. I don't know what to think. She nodded, her fingers wrapped around a mug that had gone cold hours ago. I told you it wasn't over, she said softly. Every time someone tries to close the case, something else appears. This time, there was no opening banter, no easing into the discussion. Joe leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on hers. I don't even know what's real anymore, he admitted. Half the videos people send are edited, half the claims are anonymous. But the problem is the questions you ask, they've opened a door we can't shut. Candace looked up at him, tired but resolute. Maybe that door needed to be opened, she said. The chat was exploding again, lines of text scrolling faster than the moderators could handle. Fans were divided, some begging them to keep digging, others accusing them of exploiting grief for clicks. Candace ignored it all and focused on Joe. Do you want to know why this matters to me? She asked. Joe hesitated, then nodded. Because I knew him, not like a colleague, but as a friend. He was always cautious, always double-checking everything. For him to tell people he felt unsafe, that means something, and yet everyone's acting like it's just another rumor. She paused, her eyes glassy. I can't just let that go. Joe's voice softened. And what about Erica? Have you heard from her since all of this started? The question lingered for a second too long. Candace shook her head. No. And I don't blame her. If I were her, I'd hate me too. The words slipped out before she could stop them. The rawness of it caught Joe off guard. Hate you? Come on, he said gently. You're not the villain here. Candace let out a bitter laugh. You think she sees it that way? Her husband's gone, and now I'm the one stirring up his name again. You don't think that feels like betrayal to her? The emotion in her voice was real, too real for performance. Joe sighed and rubbed his face. Look, I get it, but you also know how this works. Once something goes public, it's out of your control. You can't take it back. Candace stared at the microphone in front of her. Maybe I don't want to. Maybe it's better if the world feels a fraction of what we felt that day. Her tone was steady, but her hands were trembling. Outside the studio, the noise kept growing. Talk shows, podcasts, even late-night hosts were dissecting their every word. Some mocked her, others defended her, but everyone was talking about her. One clip went viral showing Joe telling her, "You can't fight grief with suspicion," and Candace replying, "You can if suspicion is all you have left." That exchange turned into thousands of memes, edits, and reaction videos, each one painting a different version of the truth. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. Someone from Charlie's old inner circle had reached out to Joe's team, saying they wanted to set the straight record. At first, the producers thought it was another hoax, but when they verified the contact's identity, everything changed. They arranged a private call off-air. Joe listened carefully as the voice on the other end spoke, hesitant and nervous. "You guys need to be careful," the caller said. "There are things you don't understand. This isn't just about what happened that night. It's about who knew beforehand." After the call, Joe sat in silence for nearly an hour.
When Candace arrived the next morning, he told her about it. She listened intently, eyes narrowing as he described the conversation. "Did they give you proof?" she asked. "Not exactly," he admitted. "Just hints. Said there were emails that might explain some of the inconsistencies." Candace exhaled sharply. Emails, of course. There are always emails, but no one ever shows them until it's too late. They debated whether to mention it publicly, but before they could, the story leaked on its own. Someone online claimed to have hacked private messages tied to Charlie's foundation. Screenshots began flooding every platform, showing supposed correspondence between Charlie and unnamed contacts. Most of them were blurry, unverified, and possibly fake, but that didn't stop them from spreading. By the end of the day, hashtags about the Kirk files were trending across the country. Candace's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She refused to check it, staring blankly at the studio wall instead. Joe noticed. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "No," she said flatly, "because this isn't what I wanted. I just wanted people to ask questions, not start another witch hunt." Joe nodded slowly. "Yeah, but once you light the match, you can't tell the fire where to stop." Later that night, a new rumor surfaced that Erica had left the country temporarily, seeking privacy and space. Reporters camped outside airports, hotels, and her family home. Friends denied it, but no one could confirm where she was. When Joe mentioned it on his show, he made sure to add, "These are just reports, nothing confirmed." Still, that didn't stop the speculation. Some said she left to escape the chaos. Others claimed she was meeting lawyers to take action against anyone spreading unverified claims. Candace remained silent online for 3 days, a rarity for her. When she
Finally returned, it wasn't with another theory, but with a voice note. Her tone was calm, almost too calm. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she said. "I only wanted clarity. But maybe there's no such thing when the truth itself is fractured." The message spread everywhere, reshared with captions like "Candace breaks her silence" and "Owens finally admits regret." But the truth was more complicated than that. She wasn't backing down. She was simply tired. Joe listened to the note during his next stream, shaking his head. "People forget these are real humans," he said. "You can disagree with her, but you can't pretend she doesn't care." The chat filled with mixed reactions, some supportive, others ruthless. But for the first time in weeks, Joe sounded almost protective of her. Maybe he understood now that the story wasn't just a headline anymore. It was something personal, something neither of them could fully control. As the lights dimmed in the studio again, Candace whispered something barely audible before the recording ended. "The truth always comes out, Joe. But by the time it does, no one believes it anymore." Joe looked at her, unsure whether she was warning him or herself. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and somewhere in that noise, the world kept arguing about who was right, who was wrong, and what really happened on that fateful September night. Rain tapped softly against the studio windows that night, like the world outside was holding its breath. Joe and Candace sat across from each other again, the lights dimmer than usual, the tone far more somber than in any episode before. The chaos of the past weeks had taken its toll. Both of them looked worn, not in the way fame exhausts people, but in the way endless uncertainty eats away at your peace. Joe cleared his throat and started slowly. "I almost didn't want to do this episode. Too much noise, too many people twisting everything we say." Candace nodded faintly, her gaze fixed on the glowing on-air sign. "It's already bigger than us," she murmured. "The story's running on its own now." The microphones crackled slightly, and for a long stretch, neither spoke. Then Candace broke the silence. "I saw the footage again." Joe looked up. "The rooftop clip?" She nodded. "Yeah, I slowed it down, frame by frame. You can see a reflection, someone moving before the crowd reacts. And I'm not saying it proves anything, but it's strange, Joe. It's just strange." Joe sighed, leaning back. "You realize how many people are looking for patterns now? We could stare at static and convince ourselves there's a hidden message in it." Candace gave a tired smile. "Maybe,
but sometimes static hides voices. The chat on the live stream was already buzzing. Fans were dissecting every sentence in real time, convinced the two were on the verge of uncovering something explosive. But inside the room, the energy felt less like revelation and more like reckoning. Joe finally asked, "If you could go back, would you still bring it up? All of this?" Candace hesitated, the question hitting her harder than she expected. "I think I would," she said after a pause. "Because if I didn't, I'd always wonder. And wondering is worse than being wrong." Joe nodded, rubbing his jaw thoughtfully. "You know, that's the thing about stories like this. They start with facts, then they grow teeth. Suddenly, everyone's feeding it, and it doesn't care who it bites." Candace looked up. "It's already bitten me," she said quietly. "My phone's tapped, my email's flooded, my family's asking why I can't just let it go. But I can't. Because if even one part of what I've been told is true, then this isn't just about Charlie. It's about what happens when people start deciding which truths deserve to be heard." Joe leaned forward, his voice gentler now. "But that's the problem, isn't it? No one agrees on what's true anymore. Everyone's just shouting their version of it." Candace laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. She said, "That's the age we live in. Truth used to be something you could prove. Now it's just something you can trend." As the conversation went deeper, they shifted toward the human side of the story, the one often buried beneath theories and noise. Candace spoke about Erica again, her tone full of empathy this time. She said, "I don't think she hates me. I think she just wants peace. But peace feels impossible when the world keeps replaying the worst day of your life." Joe agreed quietly. She didn't ask for this spotlight. None of us did. For a moment, they both fell silent, the only sound being the faint hum of the equipment and the rain outside. Candace grasped at Joe and added, "You know what hurts the most? The way people talk about her online. They've turned her grief into entertainment. I see edits, conspiracy montages, voiceovers with dramatic music. It's cruel. It's like people forgot there was a person behind that tragedy." Joe agreed quietly. "We're part of it too, whether we mean it or not." His voice broke slightly on the last word, the weight of that realization heavy between them. Then came the final twist, the one nobody saw coming. Joe's producer stepped into the room mid-recording, whispering something into his ear. Joe froze. Candace looked at him, eyebrows furrowed. "What is it?" she asked. Joe blinked, his expression unreadable. "Apparently," he said slowly, "someone just leaked a letter. They're saying it's from Erica." The chat exploded instantly. Candace's eyes widened. "A letter?" Joe nodded. "They're claiming it's her first written statement since everything happened. It's all over social media right now." Candace's voice trembled. "What does it say?" Joe hesitated before reading what little he'd been told. "It's short," he said. "She says she forgives those who mean well, but asks everyone to stop using Charlie's name for clicks or politics. She says the truth doesn't live on podcasts or timelines. It lives in what we choose to protect, not expose." The studio went dead silent. Candace closed her eyes, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. "She's right. She's absolutely right." Joe didn't interrupt. For once, there was nothing left to debate. They sat there for a few moments, letting the silence breathe. Finally, Candace spoke again, her voice softer than before. "Maybe that's the real message here," she said. "Not who's right or wrong, but what happens when pain becomes public property." Joe agreed. "Yeah," he said quietly, "and maybe we're all guilty of it." By the time they wrapped up, the rain outside had turned into a full storm. Flashes of lightning illuminated the studio walls, the thunder rolling like distant applause or warning. It was hard to tell which. Candace stood up, pulling her coat around her shoulders. "You think people will ever stop talking about it?" Joe gave a tired smile. "No," he said. "They'll just move on to the next mystery." She nodded slowly. Then I guess the least we can do is remind them that behind every mystery, there's a family still trying to heal. As she walked out, Joe watched her leave, his reflection flickering in the dark studio glass. Outside, cameras waited, flashes ready to turn another private moment into public spectacle. The world would keep arguing about what was real and what wasn't, twisting every phrase into something new. But for that brief, quiet moment, before the next upload, before the next headline, there was only silence. Heavy, honest, and real. So what do you think really happened? Was this all just coincidence, or are there details that deserve a deeper look? Remember, everything we've discussed tonight comes from reports, reactions, and public conversations, not proven facts. The goal isn't to convince you of anything, but to make you think about how fast stories like this can spiral once they hit the internet. Candace and Joe may have moved on to their next episode, but the questions they raised are still echoing across every platform. Questions about truth, loyalty, grief, and how much we really know when the cameras start rolling. If this story made you stop and think, take a second to share it. Hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. And most importantly, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe there's more to the story, or do you think the internet has just blown it out of proportion? Your opinion matters, and your voice keeps this conversation alive. Every week, we dive into the stories that blur the line between reality and rumor, where emotions run high and the truth hides somewhere in the middle. So stay tuned, stay curious, and remember, no matter how loud the noise gets, it's up to you to decide what you believe.